how do you know when it's time to stop holding on? And how do you know when to keep holding on? Hi, I'm Rian Angeles, and welcome to Pathways of Hope. Today I'll be sharing my reflection on the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 19, verses 3 to 12, and it reminds us of God's original design for marriage. You see, it always starts that way. God has an original design or purpose for something, and because of our fallen nature as human beings, our imperfections, we tend to forget or to miss the point. And today, Jesus specifically talks about God's original purpose for marriage. These days, we see that a common reason why people decide to be together is because of how they make each other feel, how happy they make each other feel, what they get out of the relationship, or how much they complete each other. And yet, we're surprised to find that relationships are so fragile these days, so volatile. Promises are very easily broken, and people who promise to love each other go their separate ways. And reasons? Because they're not happy anymore, or they don't feel the same anymore. Perhaps they've disappointed or hurt each other. So they stop holding on to their promise. But this is not God's original design for marriage. God calls people to the vocation of marriage for His purpose. That marriage is for family, family is for community, and community is for the kingdom of God. That's why, for us Catholics, marriage is not simply an agreement between man and woman, but a covenant between God and the people He calls to this vocation. A promise that must be kept in the worst of times and in the best of times. Is this easy to do? Of course not. Of course it's not easy to do. We know that there are people who suffer daily, who struggle just to keep this covenant. And you know what? The Lord understands. The Lord understands what it means to love to the death. The Lord understands the weight of loving anyway, even when it is difficult. See, Christ was shamed by everyone. And He tells us, I love you anyway. He was tortured mercilessly in public. And He tells us, I love you anyway. Christ was nailed to the cross to His death. And He tells us, I love you anyway. I forgive you anyway. He knows what it means to keep that promise of love to the end. That's why there's always mercy, justice, and grace available for people who share this same burden with Christ. And this call is so difficult, so radical. That's why it's also life-changing. When God calls us to be faithful to the end, we can be confident in knowing that He was faithful to us to the end first. In our worst, He loved us anyway, and it has changed our lives forever. That is the power of promise. That is the power of a love that holds on. So, if today God is calling you to something as important as marriage, aside from asking yourself, what do I think of this, or how do I feel about this? It would be good to ask yourself also, what is God's purpose for me here? What is God calling me to do here? What kind of person is He asking me to become in this vocation? And if you're someone who already made a vow to love another person to the end, know that this is a covenant that you've also made with God. And so grace is available for you to keep holding on, because He understands the weight and the power of your promise. Have a blessed day.